this is in fact bad timing as we came after the cold open, but this is in fact a glass of the Rogan whiskey. Which
Ben is hoarding.
Yes. Well, I'm actually not entirely hoarding it. For geographical reasons, I haven't been able to share it with you guys, but I have. But I did. Our good friend and frequent guest Ryan Lake drank quite a bit of it over the weekend. So it's being distributed. But
he's just drinking enough for me and Jake.
Yeah, exactly. Doing my best, comrades. But yes, so I am Ben Burgess. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined as always by our producer, Jake Appett, whose day job when he's not producing the show is union organizer, which is going to be very relevant to what we're doing in the second half of the show, because we have another Jake, this one from the Valley Labor Report podcast, the only, I believe, labor show in Alabama. They say on their website, but very good show. And we're going to be on to do something that's kind of at the intersection of what they do and what we do, which is to say we're going to debunk the terrible arguments in some anti-union propaganda videos put out by Hershey's and Starbucks and REI. That one's my favorite for reasons we'll see. But before that, we are going to watch some clips because something very strange happened to me on Wednesday, which is that I got to spend 3 hours drinking bourbon and talking about politics with the guy from Fear Factor.
Yeah, I maybe similar to some other people. I remember him from Fear Factor, show I liked as a child. And I didn't really keep tabs on the guy. You know, I had nothing against him. And the next thing I knew, he popped up as the most important person on the planet. But no, I mean, but like the most important podcaster on the planet. And I was just like, where did this come from?
It is bizarre. And I mean, he recognizes that it's bizarre that like he's somehow assumed this level of importance that we have like constant news cycles about Joe Rogan. Like, I think he thinks that that's strange, at least as much as anybody else does.
Like, where's the Mark Maron news cycle? You know what I mean? Because I thought he was the guy I turned to when I was like, okay, random people, hours and hours by some random comedian interview. And then Rogan just became the guy for that. Even people who aren't huge fans of him that I know are like, yeah, I listen, because he just has great guests, you know? So it's pretty wild to see you on there. Yeah. Pretty well.
He's absolutely a good interviewer too. Like, you know, just credit where credit's due. He's like this generation's Howard Stern.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Well, this is our graphic designer Andy, who is responsible for all those beautiful thumbnails. Although I'm not crazy about that phrase, this generation's Howard Stern, because I remember Howard Stern being on. Like, that's not that he ever left, but like I remember Howard Stern, you know, when he was a big deal. But yeah, I do remember him, as I said at the beginning there, from before Fear Factor, because I actually did watch news radio like pretty religiously in the late 90s. It's a good sitcom.
Same here. Okay, don't deny that. I love the one where Joe Rogan killed everybody in the future.
I think we may be old. But yeah, so it was a fairly strange experience, and that makes it even stranger that we had just come off of these weeks of news cycle about Joe Rogan. And I mean, it was on Super Bowl Sunday. I got the first message from his booker asking if I'd come on the show. And my first thought was to Google the guy, because I was like, okay, this is a prank, right? And then like I walked over to the couch and Jen said I looked so shocked she was going to ask me who died, right? You know, like, which is funny because like now, like online leftists who don't like me are like, oh, clearly Ben had this like long plan to get on Joe Rogan. It's like, didn't fucking think I was going to get on Joe Rogan, right? That's not like thought.
Ben, come on. You know, we have that Google Doc that with brainstorming like ways to get on Joe Rogan that we've been updating for years, like secret plans. You know, like if we have Lillian on, he's probably, you know, we know he's really into the finer points of Marx's exploitation, so he'll probably see that, and it's all gonna lead, right? It's like the dominoes are gonna fall.
Man, to get me on Joe Rogan, you can definitely tell that's why. You know, that's why I did all the, you know, like, you know, when I was on TMBS every week, like every segment before we did it, you know, it was like, okay, is Joe gonna like this one?
But, yeah. It was weird because I didn't even really know Jake at the time, but we're still on that Google Doc back then.
Yeah. This is years and years in the making. Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But as I was saying to him, that was even weirder, of course, because of what else was going on in the world. That for a minute there was getting a lot less attention than Rogan, and you know, I guess to be fair, Whoopi got some of it for a minute, but of course now it finally has sort of come to the center of the conversation in this way that was actually, so we recorded on Wednesday afternoon, and I think, you know, well, I mean, I know, right? So that night, you know, like I went out and, you know, hung out with Griscom, and then I think by the time I went to bed that night, it was like, oh shit, they actually did it, right? You know, Russia actually invaded Ukraine, which, I mean, I think I was never quite stupid enough to make any predictions one way or the other on here, but like if you'd asked me, I would have said it was not going to happen.
Well, a couple Wednesdays ago, Russia did tweet out that you don't invade another country in Europe on a Wednesday.
And then they did. Yeah,
they did. So
I mean, that would actually be kind of awesome if that was the plan. And there was like, oh, we'll throw them off. If the Wednesday before, we say nobody does this on Wednesdays.
No, they're masters of disinformation, right? Like, we are not going to do this. And it's just genius shit I wouldn't have thought of. So that's why I'm not running a bellicose, adventurous nation, right?
12-dimensional chess, let me tell you.
Yeah, where's Eric? Wait, where is Eric Garner tweeting through this? We got to check that at some point, maybe during the post game, what he's up to, because yeah, he would have a field day with some of this stuff. But anyway,
yeah, no, totally. So I guess that on the actual invasion, I think there's not much to say. I mean, if you guys have stuff to say, you can say it. But like, all I really have to say is, you know, my big starting point for this, I mean, just to be all simple-minded about this, has always been, you know, war is really bad, right? We shouldn't have wars, and, you know, if at all possible. And so what followed from that position for me, you know, before this actually happened, was that it would be really good if Bernie Sanders' call for, you know, everything on the table, peace negotiations, try to stop this from happening, had happened. You know, which it really didn't, not in anything like the way he was advocating. And so he wrote an article for the Guardian saying this, and what follows from it now is obviously, you know, I mean, Putin is a monster. I mean, the same way that George W. Bush was a monster for, you know, for doing similar things. And all love and solidarity to the anti-war movement in Russia. And then also, and somehow this is the part that's become a hot take, it's like, I think it'd be really bad if we started World War III. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've become an expert on this topic over the last week. I've done some in-depth research, but I've looked at both the pros and cons of World War III, and I'm on your side. I probably have some underdeveloped hot takes I could share in the post game about this from my week of research. But yeah, you know, you just kind of feel like when you go out to dinner now, like maybe there's going to be a nuclear war at any point, and that's kind of that's bad, right? And I feel sorry for everyone that's like dying right now. It's really terrible, and there's really no plus from any of this.
Yeah, that does tend to be my bias, although we should be fair and balanced here and show the other point of view. Do we have the Joshua Setter's tweet?
Oh yeah, about nuclear war, right?
Yeah. Okay, so this gentleman, who is apparently the editor-in-chief of something called Unprepared Life and creator of AppleBuyingAdvice.com, says that the war is very bad. Is bad, very bad. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong about this. But based on my research so far, it is more survivable than you think. The key to survival is realistic optimism and a positive mental attitude. In the meantime, here's how anyone can start food prep.
You know, when Charlton Heston crawled out of that bunker in Omega Man, it was his positive spirit more than anything else that really got him through that film, battling giant scorpions.
Well, it's about the secret, right? You put positive thoughts out in the universe, and they stop you from being vaporized by the increasingly large cloud of fire that's gonna destroy everything you've ever loved. Just think positive thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So those are the two. I want to get back to Rogan in just a second, but like those are the 2 points of view that we've kind of looked at so far, but I don't want to limit it to that. We also have a third perspective that I think can only speak for itself. I don't want to try to summarize it or put words in this guy's mouth. But do we have the woke sky tweet?
Which one? Which one is that? Oh,
Okay.
about from Rep Higgins.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is a member of Congress, Representative Clay Higgins. You millennial leftists who never lived one day under nuclear threat can now reflect upon your woke sky. You made quite a non-binary fuss to save the world from intercontinental ballistic tweets.
That's like one of those things where you start tweeting something and you realize you lost the thread somewhere, and that's where you're supposed to stop, delete what you've written, or maybe save it because maybe it might come back to you or something like that.
Or you can just power through that shit and hit post,
which is the option he chose.
I have some respect for that, where you lost it, but I feel like maybe you all don't have respect for poetry. Like, I feel like this is like slam poetry from the right, and I like what I'm seeing, and I want to see more.
Yes. Do we? So, and I have to say, yeah. I mean, I don't think look. I mean, if we do have a nuclear war, then takes two to tango. So part of that will be Biden, who I don't think, if you look at some of his thoughts about corn pop and whatnot, is the most woke person in the world. And I don't think that's ever an adjective I've heard used to describe Vladimir Putin. So I think all around the wokeness element, whatever criticisms you might have of the excesses of wokeness, I really don't think you could blame the impending end of the world on it.
No, I remember in 2012 during the Sochi Olympics, they were talking about how they were whipping LGBT people, who were protesting.
Not super woke.
Putin is very king of woke there.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of typical of what I have to say a lot of prominent right-wing tweets feel like now. I mean, this is like an extreme example, but it just feels like they're generally kind of unwell. But I keep seeing stuff about how like Putin is being like canceled and deplatformed, and like as if like the issue were with like all the war and sanctions and neocon lunatics say we should set up a no-fly zone in Ukraine and start World War III. Like it's just kind of funny. It's like it makes it sound like the issue is that Putin was going to be disinvited from CPAC or something. But so I do want to highlight though those people in this sphere who have at least been able to express some coherent thoughts, not about this issue, that might be too much to ask for, but some coherent thoughts. So friend of the show, Kevin Sorbo, has really likes to tweet. In fact, I believe he. Andy, tell us about this image. What's going on with this?
Well, I was actually first thing I greeted. You wake up, you check your Twitter, you check your DMs, and Dan Walden, who's a great writer over at Current Affairs and Gawker and a few other places, sent me a link to this picture saying, "What a brave man." And so that was how I was kind of greeted, with my morning wake up. But at CPAC, Kevin Sorbo decided to line his coat with a lining of his tweets.
Yeah, right. So the man loves his tweets, and you can see why. So I think we have an example, so you can really soak in the insight. So Kevin Sorbo says, referring to the COVID vaccine, if the shots were given away for free because they're life-saving, why isn't insulin free? Chemotherapy? EpiPens? So all I could think is, God, our man is so close to getting it here. Like he is so close to a conceptual breakthrough about what should in fact happen with healthcare policy.
I think you could tweet that exact same thing, and no one would bat an eye because they would be making the same exact point, but from the left.
Yeah, right. It'd be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. It's it's a Monday. Ben's like tweeting about Medicare for all stuff. Like
not his best tweet, but he's. I'm sure he's got to get a bunch of posts out.
yeah. So yeah, and
it probably keeps him sane because when he's usually on Cameo, he's quite drunk. So it's probably like the few sober times when he can actually be himself and put himself out there like that.
All right. Well, I do want to get back to Rogan, but do we have, since you mentioned Cameo, do you have that? Or no. Okay, never mind. We didn't get it. It's not a big deal. Kevin Sorbo has said many strange and embarrassing things, but I want to focus on this one. So because the last thing that I kind of did, well, actually, it's not completely the last thing, I should say. We'll talk about this next week. I did write something for Current Affairs that it's in the print issue. It's not online yet. But the last thing I wrote before then was for the Daily Beast. And it's an article called What Happened to Medicare for All. And the basic point that is being made in that article is, if you remember 2020, I know, it's a long time ago, but, like if you could stretch your mind back to the 2020 election cycle, there were, I think, I might be getting the exact hour wrong. I think there were 100 million hours of Democratic debates in 2019 and 2020 involving various combinations of candidates. And every single goddamn one of them had at least half an hour spent arguing about the details of healthcare policy. It was like, oh, should we have Medicare for all? Which, not just Bernie, like several of the other candidates, like Kamala Harris initially said she supported that. Or is that going too far? And should we only have a public option whereby every single American who wants to buy into it can go on Medicare? That was the moderate position in the 2020 cycle. And like Biden's campaign website still says, yeah, exactly. If Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal, why wasn't the invasion of Iraq illegal? It's like, again, right, teetering on the edge of something here, but like that was the moderate position. Biden's campaign website still says that he'll establish a public option whereby every single person, whether they're currently uninsured, whether they're currently on employer insurance, no matter what their situation is, every single person who wants to should be able to get government health care. And again, it still says so on the campaign website, but it's not just that it hasn't happened, right? Because if all it was that it hadn't happened, you could blame Manchin and Sinema, or you could blame, I don't know, the Senate parliamentarian, any of the things they do, to like pass the buck for like why like nothing good has happened. But they haven't even talked about it, like any of this. Like it's just completely disappeared into the ether. And yeah, I think Mayor Pete actually did say that for a minute before he changed his mind and became a public option guy, that Medicare for all was the middle ground, which is actually a correct point because, you could go all the way to the British system and have the government own the hospitals and pay the doctors. Like this is actually literally still a middle ground. And by the way, you should do that. The NHS is great, but this just completely disappeared. And it's just hard to avoid the impression that it's going to continue to disappear. Like that if we hear about it again, it won't be till 2024 if Biden has a heart attack or something and we have a contested primary in 2024. Otherwise, we're not going to hear about it again until 2028 because that just seems like how this goes.
Yeah, and I mean, now with the drums of war beating, I mean, hopefully they, the government's responsible, but I think that, with all these distractions, there's no way that they're going to focus on this domestic stuff like that. They weren't going to do it anyway, but now
they certainly weren't doing it before, but they're really not going to do it now.
And they have an excuse now.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. So I do want to go back to Rogan. So let's just pick up. I think this is about a minute after we left off the previous time.
I just want to point out, so how it seems like fire departments are pretty central to Joe's worldview. So I thought that was interesting. And like, do you think that that's common, or is that idiosyncratic? I could let it play, but I thought that was interesting because he brought it back twice to the fire department. Yeah. And I know in Bhaskar's like the ABCs of Socialism, one of the first essays is about how the fire department isn't socialism, right? But watching this, I was thinking like Joe explaining this to millions of subscribers, is that really? It's the metaphor still kind of holds. So I was wondering what your thoughts on that.
I should also say that Nathan Robinson used the exact same metaphor in an article in Current Affairs in was it early 2020, which is just the entire article is just how if we didn't have public fire departments, every single argument that's used against Medicare for all could be used against that. And I remember like one of them was like, well, England has a fire department, and I hear that there are problems with it, but
yeah, there's buildings that burn down, and there's a waiting list too of which building, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I don't know, actually. I do vaguely remember that article that you're talking about. And I think I'd have to go back and look at it and see what it means. But, look, obviously having a fire department doesn't make it a socialist society, but also it is, a socialist policy, surely, to have, fire protection be provided by a publicly owned entity that's, that's free at the point of service. So yeah, I'm pretty good with that. But let's watch a little bit more.
So far, I think it's great that you got on noted leftist Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about leftism, right? So far, we could get started in a minute, but it is very telling how much he agrees with. There's really no pushback in any of that.
No. In fact, actually, the really surprising thing in some ways, and I'm not saying this as a slam against him. I think most people haven't, necessarily spent a lot of time sitting with how all this fits together. But in some ways, the really, out of all the lefty stuff I got him to agree to over the course of the interview, right? So, which just in those first few minutes, teachers unions are really good and important. Ideally, we'd have a society where there wouldn't need to be any private schools at all. Healthcare should be fully socialized. Everything, it's not just those sort of policy things, but also notice at the very beginning, I gave him G.A. Cohen's socialist equality of opportunity principle that the only fully just kind of income inequality would literally just be made based on things that are, decisions you're making of your own free will, that, different trade-offs, between work and, and leisure. And he was like, yeah, sounds totally right to me. And actually, I should say later on too, actually, if you want to take off the screen share for a second, there's something else I wanted to share for this, but they have later on in the interview, we're not going to get to it right in this segment, we might play some of this in the post game or next week or whatnot. But it's a long interview, guys. But like later on, there's a point where we're talking about free speech, and I just say, yeah, that's why I don't like the anti-CRT laws. And I do like 2 minutes on why the laws against, teaching critical race theory are like awful and McCarthyite. And he ends it by saying, I completely agree. Which like, James Lindsay's been on that show too, right? That's
so what happened there? Did you watch? Do we know how did he push back on James Lindsay?
Yeah, I would actually be really curious to watch that interview. I'm not like, I haven't watched it yet because it's 3 hours of James Lindsay, but yeah, I would be very curious to see what he said in that interview, or if this was just like, in other words, whether this was like he was always skeptical of Lindsay's argument, right? Which is possible. He does do that sometimes. Like I've there's like a clip I think of him giving like pushing back on on Candace Owens, and and there are some much beloved in my world ones of him argue with Dave Rubin, but so it is not outside of the realm of possibility, but it's also just possible that like he never heard anybody give him the case against CRT laws before, right? Like, which is entirely possible given what that guest list looks like. And then like later, when the trans stuff came up, I said, and I mean, I guess this one I didn't get it. I completely agree with you, but like he did seem sympathetic to this point, right? I mean, if we watch this at some point, that doing basically what just came out in Texas, which was not explicitly referred to, but like that's basically what we're talking about, right? That having like stopping minors from transitioning by doing things like taking puberty blockers. I said, like, we went back and forth about it a little bit. He wasn't like saying like, yeah, that should definitely be totally outlawed or whatever, but he was like more sympathetic to it than I was. And I kind of gave him the case for like, no, this is like really bad to force people to go through from what's their perspective is the wrong puberty. And like, he seemed pretty sympathetic to that too, right? So like, even on some of the social issue stuff, there's quite, I got, quite because I think that was, and the other one was about like trans athletes. And, I mean, I wasn't going to get into like exactly what the like hormone requirements for like different, it's like, for one thing, I don't know any of that, right? I'm not going to pretend like I know any of that. Right. But like, I told him that, look, if I, cause he was like, oh, what if you have a daughter who's, whatever done, trained for this sport, and then this, person comes in and they, bust through all the records and stuff. And it's like, okay, maybe, but I mean, like if I had a trans daughter, I'm pretty sure I'd be concerned that the rules be fair to her and not completely exclude her. And again, I mean, I'm not, and I actually asked him what he thought the rules should be about that. And at that point he was like, yeah, I'm not sure. Right. So, I mean, I think even there, right, there's some, like, it just seems to me that whatever else you get out of this conversation, and look, clearly Jordan, Joe Rogan has friends who are not my friends, right? He has friends who are the kind of people that I'll sarcastically call friends of the show when I'm about to like talk about some horrible thing they said, right? And by the way, I know that like, sure, some people say, oh, but like, why didn't, when he like mentioned Jordan Peterson's name at one point, right? Why didn't you like stop the conversation to be like, actually, that guy sucks, It seems like, and look, if he'd invited me on to talk about Jordan Peterson, I would have happily spent 3 hours arguing about Jordan Peterson. But because he wanted to talk to me about my book, and I wanted to get in as much of the lefty stuff, like policy stuff, as humanly possible, that just seemed like it would have been an awful, like a ridiculous waste of time on that platform, to be like, actually, here's why your friend sucks. Let's argue about that for half an hour. But I will say that when you think about all of this, right? So, okay, so he's somebody who, he very frequently has on guests who I do not like, and he clearly likes a lot more than I do. And and there are issues where his instincts are obviously much more conservative than mine, and et cetera, et cetera. But like the last, there are people who like somehow have convinced themselves, I think probably because they only watch like the occasional clip, and it's only certain kinds of clips that come to their attention, that Joe Rogan is like Ben Shapiro. And this is very, very, very far from being true, right? Like he's this guy who, some of his views are a little all over the place. Most of his episodes aren't about politics at all. I mean, literally the one just before me was an interview with the chef, and the one just after me was an interview with the dietitian. So like that's out of those 3 days, there's 2/3 food and 1/3 politics. And there's a lot of MMA, there's talks about psychedelics, whatever, like all it. And yeah, he does have a lot of right-wing guests on. He should definitely have more leftists on, but is also clearly pretty open to a lot of these ideas. And what I did just want to point out before we go back and play, the last part I wanted to play, before the second half of the show, is I think it is really telling to think about how the right plays this. Because, for example, the Daily Caller, which is like a super conservative magazine, I think it was founded by Tucker Carlson, put out an article that was sort of about this episode. I think we have that here. They don't give a fuck. Joe Rogan says media doesn't care what's important, just try to stay alive. And you heard some of, some of that quote is taken from the part you just heard, right? So, and then like in the body of the article, they quote that, which is fine. I mean, like, he's not saying anything incorrect there. But then like what they basically do is they just quote a bunch of the most right-wing things he says in the episode. And it's hilarious too, because like in the article, they're like, Joe Rogan said to guest Ben Burgess, and then like, there isn't a single word that guest Ben Burgess said that's quoted in the entire piece. And they certainly don't quote him like the 30 times over the course of the interview, like I got him to agree to something super leftist. And you know what? That's pretty strategically savvy of them, because what do they see, right? When they see Joe Rogan, they see this tremendously likable guy who has like the biggest audience on the planet, and lots of people from various parts of the political spectrum listen to him, and they think, yeah, what's the way that we should approach this? We should play up the times that he agrees with us, and we should just kind of ignore the times that he disagrees with us, which is really interesting, because I've got to say that is exactly the opposite of the left's approach. Not only the left's approach to Jordan Peterson, but a lot of the online left's like approach to like me, right, for going on Jordan. Not just to Jordan Peterson. She's Joe Rogan. I have Peterson on my mind because he's about to come up, but they have a not just their approach to Joe Rogan. It's their approach to me for going on Joe Rogan, right? That like people like be, oh, here's a clip of I don't know. I mean, I didn't say anything right wing, but here's a clip of Ben saying that sometimes the left does dumb things, and and let's spend all of our time talking about that, and not like here's a clip of like Ben getting Joe Rogan to agree that like anti-CRT laws are bad, or like any of the stuff that we just watched. I just think that difference is really telling, and what it tells me is that the right is a lot more serious about trying to persuade people who could go either way.
Yeah, we got to get some of these like clickbait HuffPo articles, like Dr. Burgess gets Joe Rogan to agree to the left's plank, but I'm guessing they're a little too centrist. But no, we should get back to the video. But yeah, I think I real quick, for all non-Patreon members, I have a pitch, which is that we will do a bunch of coke and watch the entire Joe Rogan Conceptual James episode on a post game sometime, and you only access it if you become a Patreon subscriber. So that's my pitch.
Fair enough. All right.
And by Coke, he means Coca-Cola, because we're not endorsing drugs here.
Yeah, I'm high on life, guys. All right, let's go back to Jerry.
Money.
Off a second. I did just want to say I saw there was some conservative on Twitter. It was like, see, they don't even know how much stamp costs, and they don't use this. It's like, okay, first of all, motherfucker, I did not say I didn't use the post office. We send stuff through the post office all the time. I send my wife like is the one who's buying stamps. Secondly, I did in fact Google this right after, and we were overestimating the price of the stamp. It's 58 whole cents, right? So that's a first class stamp. So like less than $1 is like making it sound like it's way more than it is. What you should say is like just over 50 cents.
Yeah, you were doing like 99 cents, when you're doing the opposite. But yeah, has Kirk ever been on the show? Because I'd be curious to hear them converse about the post office.
That is a really good question. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Yeah, no, we should go. Yeah, but no, it is funny though, because it's not just him being polite. He's like, the post office is fucking great. So unless he's just on MDMA and just loves everything,
not just being polite. There's actually a wonderful. We don't have time to do it now. Maybe we can do it in the post game. But there is a classic clip of Joe Rogan interviewing Dave Rubin, and this is before he stopped having Rubin on. Like Rubin has said in public that he begged everybody at the Joe Rogan show to have him on to talk about his new book, and they wouldn't do it. And Rogan, he didn't explicitly say Dave Rubin's name, but it's pretty clear he was talking about him. Said like, look, I'm willing to have on people I really disagree with, but like not if I don't think you're sincere. And like the way he put it made it really sound like he was talking about Dave Rubin. But when he did have Dave Rubin on, there's this beautiful clip of the two of them arguing about the post office. So this one I will say is not a new view of his at all. Like he has because he's Rubin at that stage of his journey was calling himself a libertarian, and he was advocating the post office. That was like a sound drop they used all the time, like Michael used all the time on TMBS. As the competition would start to kick in. That say, well, because it'd be fine because you have Amazon and drones and competition, would start to kick in, and Rogan is essentially making fun of him for saying that. So yeah, that thing is a thing of beauty. We've got to play that sometime, but yeah, meanwhile, we really should get back to that. Yeah, all right. So here's that's the part where I sell out, Andy.
Yeah. I knew I was going to get canceled with you coming on Joe Rogan. I just didn't expect you to be doing the canceling.
Look, guys, contribute to the Patreon so that we could get to the point where Andy's doing this full time and it would no longer be crazy. That if we converted into a co-op, he would have voting rights. That's the.
I wish that Joe fucking knew who Jay Andy was and was like, actually, like the show would be way better if Jay Andy had voting rights. That would have been like more of like a Nardwar vibe where he like did an intense amount of research about you and just like it was like, oh, I think Jay Andy and Jake Appett should have voting rights. I wish he came out and said that, but yeah, it wasn't a mystery where you got that economic example from. I guess it's like when professors write textbooks and they're like, suppose like X person does Y thing. It's all just people from their personal life, I guess.
Yeah. Was probably the last time I paid somebody to do something before that. So there we go. I will just point out here that like. Again, I know that there are, I know that there are people who are mad that there's like a point, like, I don't know, 2/3 the way through the interview or something where I say that, that like beating people up for things they write is a bad idea and it's counterproductive. Like I said, Andy Doe was like dishonest and awful, and I don't like him, but like also like he shouldn't have been beaten up, which is apparently a hot take. But just from a left perspective, okay, I think this may have been the first time like somebody ever talked about worker co-ops on the Joe Rogan Experience. Because Wolf has never been on. I actually checked that after this conversation. And I've listened to the Bernie and Cornel West, so unless Kyle Kalinske got it in there, one of those those appearances. This might be the first. This might be the first time, and I think for damn sure it's the first time that Joe's heard about postal banking, right? Because like when I brought that up, he's like, "Wait, what?" Right? And which is whatever. I'm sure what a lot of people's reaction would be. But then like by the end, like he seemed to like get the rationale, right? It's like, oh yeah, right, people have to rely on check cashing businesses, all that. So just in terms of, especially because like this first part we're watching, I mean, I have no idea. I would love to see these numbers if I could somehow get into the innards of Spotify and get the analytics. How many people, of course, watch an episode? There are the estimates that you see floating around, 11 million or whatever. I'm not totally sure what that's based on, but then also how what the average view time is. Like I would love to know that about Joe Rogan Experience. Like what percentage? I mean, there is a chunk of people who aren't getting through all 3 hours of all these. I'm very well aware, right? But like, my guess would be that the most listened to half hour is the first half hour, and just because like that's how I experience a lot of media, right? That like especially that like, oh yeah, I'll listen to half an hour, and then the next day there's another one, and I'll listen to that. So I am happy that I managed to get in Mondragon. It would be better. I mean, it's kind of funny, actually. The thing I just wrote for Current Affairs was a review of Red Plenty, where I take a more nuanced position on like whether it might ever be possible to have completely marketless, version of socialism. But like at least it'd be good to have an economy that's dominated by worker co-ops rather than by traditional capitalist businesses. How those work. Postal banking, why the post office is great, why teachers unions are great. Why we need Medicare for all, that like all this stuff was in the first half hour. So I do want to say I feel good about that. But
no, you Bernied it up, right? Where you're like, I'm gonna get out my like 15 talking points, and you're not gonna. I mean, there was no pushback, but like when Bernie is like on some kind of town hall or on some like mainstream media thing, he loads it in, right? And he has it all queued up, and I think you did that. And I think
finally came out with this big piece of pro-worker legislation, which is essentially to legalize company unions. It's called the Team Act, which is just
yeah. And before we get to the
for employees and managers, that's what
somehow there's an I in that team, which I don't quite get.
Exactly. And we should get to the next Union Buster clip.
Yeah, one point I did just want to make about this one is just like on a really obvious level. Says like, what does she say at the beginning? That's Starbucks partner. What does she say? That you're going to lose your individual voice. It's like, wait a second, what does that mean? Right? That they like are you supposed to believe as a Starbucks worker that you are going to have more influence on what the boss says as just like one individual with all of the bargaining power of one individual? That, I mean, I guess you could threaten to quit, but like that's it, right? That's going to have more influence than if you and everybody else who works there are organized together. That seems odd.
Yeah, I don't think people really think that, because people aren't stupid. What they're fear mongering them on is like the little tiny bullshit you get from what the bullshit your manager does get you, which is you call your manager and you're like, hey, I'm sick, I'm coming in 5 minutes late, and the cool manager, because not most managers, but the cool manager will be like, yeah, that's okay. So what they try to scare you on is to say, once the union comes in, if you're 5 minutes late, you have to call Union Jake, and he has to okay it, and he's this big union boss, and that's bullshit. Because last thing that either Union Jake or a union president wants to do is like worry about who the fuck is 5 minutes late. But that's what they're trying to scare you on, because people know they have no say right now, but they are so afraid of losing the tiny little bit that they have, I think, and that's where they're trying to get them, is that fear. Should we do another one?
They're trying to get the one blanket. You think you have one blanket, but you have to share it with everybody else.
Yeah. I think they replaced Howard in terms of the Union Busters. But should we do another one Let's
do. So I think on the I want to do. Okay, so I want to save REI for last because that's the best one. But let's do the Hershey's, the weekend one.
Hi, I'm Renee Rhines, line 53, mold line technician. I've been here for 35 years. Let's stand together here at Sturge-Straff and vote no for the union. I do not want to lose what I have had for 35 years here at Sturge-Straff. Good insurance, sick pay, buying vacation, and the most recent, our continuous work schedule to where we have every other weekend off.
Really sad.
Yeah, no, that
Like when I saw that, I mean, I literally hurt for her, you know, like she's got some boss has gotten inside her mind, like wormed her way in there that she's going to lose every other weekend off. I mean, like, holy shit, you know, that's just so sad. But that is another extremely common thing. Something that I said to you, Ben, in the DMs that we didn't really have enough time for, was that it would be cool, and maybe this is something I can do on my show, but it would be cool if we could get a lot of these audio where they're all saying the exact same thing, just like you know, everybody remembers that the local union anchor montage where they were all saying the same thing, because they do say broadly the same thing. And this is part of the argument that if you get a union, if you unionize and you get a collective bargaining agreement, you negotiate a contract, it could be better, it could be the same, or it could be worse, right? It could be worse. And that's just not true. For one, there's this thing in labor law called status quo. When you vote to unionize, that is where you're starting at. The company cannot take away from where you're at in the negotiation process because you unionized. So you've got a floor here that legally you can't go under, okay? But even if legally you could go under, the only way that you get a contract approved is to approve it, is to vote on it. The membership votes to accept or not the contract that you negotiated, that you elected people to negotiate, that your negotiating team surveyed the membership and saw what the needs of the membership were, and they helped write the contract that you then voted on to approve. And just like Jake said, I think that most working people are pretty smart, especially when it comes to their paychecks and their lives. And I don't think that people would vote themselves a pay cut. I don't think that that woman would vote herself having to work 2 weeks straight instead of 1.5 weeks straight. Like, I just don't think she would do that. And I don't think her coworkers would either. But that's, you know, so that's really important in dispelling this myth, is, and it goes back to that unions are the workers. You're the ones that vote for your negotiation team, you help write the contract, and you vote on the contract. So you're not gonna vote yourself you know, a pay cut from where you are now. That just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think one nuance there is, you know, you are joining a larger organization, but you're doing that for power, right? So you know, it's a larger democratic organization. But I often tell workers, like, you know, you could literally just form a union of just you and not join RWDSU or CWA or something like that. Because basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to third party RWDSU. They're trying to third party CWA where I work and say that this is just some bureaucracy. And there's nothing stopping you from just forming, you know, the Amazon union. And some people are doing it, but it's like are forming their own individual union. But it just, you know, there's power in numbers, right? So ultimately you're making a consideration was, is it worth me joining this larger group in order to get a better contract and to utilize the resources that they have, right? So that's the trade-off people are making, which I think, you know, and I'm sure Union Jake agrees that most of the time it's a good decision to make, you know, but it's still you who has democratic control over your contract and your working conditions.
Exactly. Right. I mean, being a part of that of a larger union does help you, but the larger union isn't voting on your contract.
Yeah.
You're voting on your contract. And this is something that I was that I was telling those folks when I was down there. And they were concerned about some other things. They were concerned about dues and things like this. And you don't start paying dues in most unions, in most organizing campaigns, until you get your first contract that you ratified. And they asked me what dues would, and you mentioned the resources that a broader union, that a larger union would have. RWDSU has hundreds of thousands of members. And so she asked me what dues go to. And I said, well, hundreds of thousands of workers across the United States and Canada pay like $20 40 bucks a month, $20 a paycheck, so that people can come down here and tell you how you can make your life better, so that people can help you make your life better. Not so that we can do it for you, but so that we can help you help yourself, so that we can help you help yourself and your coworkers and your families and your communities. We have lawyers, we have strike funds, we have people who there are a lot of it. And that was another thing, is that she was worried about going on strike. And she said, Amazon didn't tell me that RWDSU gives strike benefit checks. And I was like, of course they didn't. Of course they didn't.
Yeah, well, that's what you say, right? That's going to go towards all this stuff. But let's check out the next video.
Okay, we have a few Hershey videos back to back. So
unions are business.
Yeah, I believe that this is in the trio of videos we're about to play.
Okay.
Let's check it out.
Sorry, it's part of a trio. But
a package.
Unions are not a charity, but a business. Their goal, like any business, is to make money. The more money they take from members, the more they can pay to themselves in salaries, benefits, and other perks.
A lot of people during the organizing phase, they're joining the union because they don't think that the work rules are fair, or they don't like the way the company's running the business. Their hours are reduced, or conversely, there's too many hours. And as an organizer, we'll tell them that those are the kind of things that we can certainly get involved in, that kind of stuff. The reality is, every collective bargaining agreement that I've seen has a management rights clause. And if you ever see a union contract, look for it. It'll be in there. And the management rights clause addresses all those things. And management always reserves the right to run their business. They run the business. The union doesn't run their business. And that's a good thing. Management always in a collective bargaining agreement has extensive language reserving their right to hire, fire, promote, make rules, change rules, increase production, shut down production. They always maintain the right to run their business.
I remember that the first morning at a plant that we had that went on strike, I saw people dive in front of cars, saw people get hit by a car, saw people spit on, yelled at, cops pulling up in paddy wagons, employees running over fences and driving where they're not supposed to be driving to get to work. Extremely scared looks on their faces. How are they going to provide for their family? I mean, they're not told anything really. A rank and file people, how long is this going to take? They'd walk up to me, how long are we going to be out? I don't know, till it's over. Well, I hope it doesn't last more than 2 days. I said, you got to be kidding me. 2 days? Well, yeah, I can't afford to live.
Yeah, so Hershey's is really pulling out all the stops here, right? Because within that one montage, what do we get? We got unions aren't really going to be able to help you, right? Because of this management rights clauses. So like all of your complaints about this, it's not going to do anything. And going with that, we had they're just going to sit there collecting dues, and to whenever we saw those graphics, they're going to like sit on the beach and stuff, having grown so.
My sports car that I could afford in New York City off my union salary. Anyway.
Yeah. But then conversely, they're going to lead you out onto the super militant strike where people are going to be like fighting with scabs and fighting with cops, and it's going to be really scary because it could last for a long time because they're going to really stay out until you get something. And I'm not quite sure. Like this seems like kind of Schrodinger's union here.
Yeah,
Like
I would say so. I mean, a union that is, that's only interested in organizing dues or collecting dues and making sure that those management rights clauses are upheld is not going to be leading a strike where, where they're commanding people to like fight scabs and stuff. But the last video where that guy was talking about the strike, that made me sympathetic to like the union rather than because he was like all the violence that he was talking about was coming from the company and the scabs and the cops and it's like, this is an anti-union video or is it just a broader critique of society and how it's like unfriendly to working people or so that one was a strange one to me. But they do definitely try to fearmonger about strikes, and they don't tell you that, you authorize a strike. Again, you're the union, and there's a strike sanction vote. We just talked on the show a couple weeks ago about how a local union voted unanimously in favor of sanctioning a strike going into negotiations. And that's how all the other unions are. You have to vote to say like, okay, yeah, let's go on a strike. And if you don't think an issue is worth striking over, then you won't vote to strike over it.
yeah, and not only that, right? But I mean, like any, my very limited, PMC-ish experience with this, right? Like I was on the like executive board of the adjunct professors union at Rutgers at one point, where there was like a actual possibility of a strike, and you're not only is do you have like a mandated threshold, right, that vote needs to meet, in order for there to actually be a strike, but like no no union leadership that's like not crazy is going to want to do it without like the actual numbers being way better than that, right? I mean, like they're going to have to be really, really good for you to risk doing that. So the idea that it's just like the sort of picture that you get, right? It's like, I don't know, putting the videos together, or maybe there's the fat cat union boss like sitting on the beach in Costa Rica. It's like, yeah, you know what? It's been a while since there's been a strike. I'm gonna phone this in, and order them to go out and strike. And yeah, whatever, fuck them. I'm not gonna tell them how long it's gonna last. It'll last how long it lasts. And they're certainly not getting any strike funds. This is not actually how it works.
No, and I mean, like, I'm not saying that this video is targeting conservatives, but it is funny from the conservative point of view. Like, the left are just like a bunch of soy pussies who can't take a fight, but also these unions are way too militant and too violent. And like fuck yeah. I mean, if actually we were having all these militant strikes all the time, which I guess is happening more often, like that's not how I would lead talking to a worker. Like that would maybe be a little bit too radical for like to start with, but it would obviously be only a good thing if we had more strikes like this. And during the heyday of unions, there were a lot more militant strikes, so I do think there's this disconnect where they're violent all of a sudden, but stand up for yourself and be violent if it's just you and your buddies doing like a militia, but if it's you and your buddies standing up for your working conditions, then it's a menace to society. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy there.
Yeah, for sure. Before we leave Hershey's, I do want to. So we've been watching all of the videos that Hershey's management has been putting out to discourage people from organizing, but especially because there was that one
that unfortunately worked. Those are all videos from the Hershey's campaign in Stewart's Draft, Virginia, and BCTGM pulled the petition because there was because they lost so much support because I reckon they fired a union supporter or two. And it was just the anti-union campaign there was really, really, really bad. So
yeah. But I think it is really striking, given this, to see. I just saw this tonight, actually, very shortly before we went on air. there is a video from the other side of a bunch of Hershey's workers actually talking about their conditions. And so I think we just grabbed the first 22 seconds of that.
It's known as the Hershey prison, and we get home release.
I've worked 28 days straight consecutively without a day off at Hershey.
I've worked 33 days straight.
72 days consecutively. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. Did I try to get days off? Yes. I was denied that weekend unless I got my own coverage.
The fuck?
All right, something weird's going on with Andy's audio, but yeah, I mean, this is so I don't know. I mean, it sounds to me like those people that we just heard from in that last video are in real danger of losing the open door they have to individually, talk to their boss about their problems and and anyway, what does it matter, because they'll still have management rights.
Right. I mean, we this is something that we've been seeing a lot of workers, and it's, it may be almost time to retire the unions brought us the weekend, because having a weekend, regularly having Saturday and Sunday off is, it is becoming less and less of a reality for so many working people, just like those folks. And but unions can bring you a weekend. that's something that you can get if you have a union, if you are a union. And it's just seeing people, the Braxton, he's a striking coal miner here in Alabama. When he testified in DC, he said something very similar to that they were working 6-7 day weeks, and it would break your heart how often his kid would ask, why weren't you at my award ceremony? Why didn't you come to my game? Why didn't you eat dinner with us? And it's like, well, I had to work or I had to sleep. And that's just really, really sad. And it's really, really sad that working people have to live like that. In current year, it's really unfortunate. And, the way to do that is through organizing. People talk to people say that, I'm always saying that unions are the answer, that organizing is the answer, but there's not any other answer. Workers make the world run. It's not Jeff Bezos that is getting stuff to your house, and it's not those folks on Wall Street that are pulling the coal out of Alabama coal mines, and it's not Milton Hershey's descendants who are making chocolate. It's the workers. And so what it takes is workers using the power that they have to make their lives better. Because if they want, if you utilize this open door policy and you go to your boss and you say, I want, I want this or that or the other thing, they can just ignore you. But if you go to your boss with everybody in your workplace, with everybody that works for your company across the country, then they have to listen. And if they don't listen, then you can start talking about next steps. You can start talking about shutting down production. They can't do the work without you. And that's the leverage that people have. Strikes are scary, of course, but that's workers using their leverage, and it wins. It wins for workers. We opened talking about John Deere, and they got a 10% raise. They're probably one of the only groups of workers in the country that got a 10% raise that actually beat inflation. And they did it because they struck. They did it because they were organized, and they took action.
Yeah, that is very well said. Okay, let's do. I want to get, I think, the bleeding edge of anti-union propaganda here. This is the. I actually don't think there's anything that I can say to set this up to show exactly how good this is. So REI. This is actually what is this? Is like a podcast they're putting out.
The first one's a podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like a couple things that we put together, but the first one is from their like REI's union busting podcast, and it is something else. Let's
yeah, when I'm going for a run, I listen to Rogan, I listen to Burgess, I turn on the REI union busting podcast, just have something in the background to listen to. But let's check it out.
Hi, REI. My name is Wilma Wallace, and I serve as your Chief Diversity and Social Impact Officer. I use she, her pronouns, and am speaking to you today from the traditional lands of the Ohlone people. So I'm here chatting with Eric Arts, who serves the co-op and all of us as CEO. Eric, welcome.
Well, thank you, Wilma. Thank you for hosting, and hello to everyone that is listening. For those of you who I have not had the chance to meet, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm speaking to you today from the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples. And thank you. Let me start by saying unions are important and valuable, and they play a vital role in supporting the rights of workers across many workplaces, companies, and industries. In fact, many of the workplace laws we now have in place can be traced back to union support. My father was a teacher in a teachers union and led the union when I was a teenager, and I have experienced unions in other businesses and sectors that I have served. So when people ask, why don't we support unions? My answer is simple. We do not oppose unions. It's that I do not believe, that introducing a union is the right thing for REI.
Oh my God, that rules. Okay.
Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, no, this is really, I feel like I've seen the future here, that like there's going to be in like whatever like bleak like cyberpunk dystopia we're headed into, where you literally bring back indentured servitude, and like the company like exercises options to harvest your organs and shit like that. Like whoever's sitting you down to explain this deal is going to start out by saying that they use he, him pronouns and doing a indigenous land acknowledgement.
Just to be clear, this is the future that liberals want, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. No,
you go.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I actually really don't have a problem. Some socialists do, all right wingers do, right? Have a problem with how she's speaking. It's really not that, like, if you want to do pronouns and do land acknowledgements, it's the fact that you're doing it to fucking take working class people's rights away from them is just the most cynical thing that I can imagine. But it's very funny. So this one cheered me up. The other ones raised my blood pressure. This is just so stupid. It probably won't even work, that it kind of cheered me up.
Yeah. Well, I think the woke union busting kind of stuff is something that we're going to see more of in organizer trainings over the last few years. One of the things that I've been a part of in role playing is like bad boss, mad boss, sad boss, and bad boss, and so like these are the different kinds of bosses that you might see in an anti-union campaign, and I think that the woke boss is going to be is going to be a new archetype, and a fun anecdote: the Starbucks diversity, equity, and inclusion officer is also their director of crisis communications. And he is, anytime that you hear a Starbucks person reached out to us in an article, it's him that's talking to the article. And he actually emailed us, a small Alabama union talk radio show, because we were spreading misinformation or something. And so, I talked to him for like an hour, and as we were wrapping up, I asked him how much he made, and he did not want to tell me. So he asked me how much I made, and I told him $55,000 a year. What about you? And he was like, well, I'm sure you do a great job. Let me know if you have any other questions. But this, there's a Jacobin article that Alex Press wrote when this came out that's really, really good, because like Jake said, there's a certain, what they want you to do as a union organizer, I think, is they want to make the union come off as they are not progressive. we, the bosses, actually care about our workers and their intersecting identities and their marginalized communities and the needs that they have as those identities. The union is just a bunch of old white men in hard hats, and they think all this woke stuff is silly. And you know, we can, but and so on a certain level we can laugh at it, but on another level we can actually say, well, you know, making sure that trans people feel comfortable is important, and making sure that indigenous rights are protected is important. And here is how our union is leading on that. Unions decrease wage gaps. In Wisconsin, before Act 10 was passed and Scott Walker's assault on public sector unions, there was no wage gap between male and female teachers. There was none. It was zero. After Act 10 passed and he demolished public sector unions, all teachers took I believe it was a $5,000 annual average pay cut. Teachers, all men and women. And then there was also a new wage gap that was introduced. Women now make 11% less than men, the teachers do, in Wisconsin, because they don't have a union. Black union workers make more than white non-union workers on average. These are all averages. You know, and so there's a certain level where some of this may be a little bit, it's really, really funny that people are using these sort of things to try to stamp workers organizing. But workers organizing is actually doing more on these fights than bosses have ever done. And that's, you know, that to workers that are concerned about these issues, that's a way that we can lead. And because it's true, you know, there was somebody that was asking me how to talk to people who are scared about these sort of things. And well, you know, one advantage that we have that the bosses don't is that all we have to do is tell the truth. So,
yeah, no, that is very well said. I mean, I think that, you know, kind of go back to other Jake's comment, our Jake, I think that the deal, like, part of why it's so funny in like a grim, horrible sort of way is that, I mean, I think it actually does get down to why, you know, like, I do feel some, you know, like, mild distaste, you know, for like some of those like rituals of kind of like performative wokeness, which is certainly not because I think that people should be like going around, you know, misgendering trans people. They should not, right? I mean, that's a deeply obnoxious and disrespectful thing to do, right? And it's also not because I don't think that like Native Americans, you know, have, you know, like legitimate complaints about the way, you know, that you know, the history of the United States or many present realities of the United States. You know, it's that these things are like part of why they kind of, I think, strike some people, including me, as like a little bit like, God damn it, right? This, you know, right? Like that's not like a socially reactionary reason. Is that it just feels so performative, right? It feels so much like you're doing this instead of actually doing anything that would matter on these issues, right? That like, you know, you can't, you know, it costs nothing to, you know, it costs nothing to have, you know, to go around and have people who aren't trans and nobody thinks are trans, and there's like no, like, to, you know, say like, you know, well, I use he and pronouns, you know, like that costs nothing. Paying for trans people's healthcare, right, like costs money. It is like the kind of thing an employer, you know, would object to doing, right? You know, it's like, no, you know, we're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna, you know, find
and yeah, and I could give you an example too, even that I've encountered, and like my line of organizing is like, let's say you work a retail job and you get graded by the customer, right? And if you get enough bad customer ratings, you get a pay cut, right? So let's say you live in an area where you're queer, or you're of a marginalized identity, and people come in and they're being prejudiced against you, and then they mark you down, right? They mark you down on a survey or something like that, right? So the union could fight to say like, hey, we got to make sure that our pay isn't tied to like just what random people's prejudice and racism, right? But most people don't feel comfortable going up to their boss and saying like, hey, I know that they rated me low because I'm black or I'm trans or whatever it is, and that's why my paycheck at the end of the day, because it's a commission-based job, is going to go down, right? So you're literally getting punished for your identity, and that's exactly the type of issue that a union could fight for. That is at the end of the day a race issue or a trans issue, and it's the type of thing that we can win alongside workers, but it's not the type of thing that the bosses are want to talk about. But I'm saying like there are very specific nitty-gritty issues where you could find yourself fucked over because of your identity, and you're right, it's not because somebody didn't say their pronouns at the beginning of the anti-union captive audience meeting.
Yeah, and just go to the other one, right? The land acknowledgements. Like I think in some ways, I mean, yeah, I think there are lots and lots of ways that like having a union can help with that. Like, one of the like the least effective, union that I've been a member of, and I'm not going to name it, right? Like it was still, you like still working at that place. It was like, okay, one thing I definitely do know is that I'm not going to be arbitrarily fired because, it's like being a made mad, right? They can still whack you, but you need to sit down at a good reason, right? That there are now there's like a process for like appealing this and saying like, no, they didn't have any good reason. Like I was really just fired for, right? Like whatever. It could be the boss's prejudice. And just to really quickly go on the land acknowledgement issue. I mean, like in certain respects, this is even more obscene because, like, okay, that feels very like it's like, oh, see, so we care, right? We're not giving any of this land back, but like to have a we will acknowledge that other people used to live on it. I'm sure that feels really good to be acknowledged, right? Everybody likes acknowledgement, but like last statistics I saw, the Native American poverty rate is over 25%. That's higher than the Black poverty rate, right? That and much higher, higher the Hispanic poverty rate, much higher, obviously, the white poverty rate. Like, seems to me that that the descendants of the people who those crimes were committed against, that the land acknowledgements sort of gesturing at in a weird performative way, like what they would benefit from is a more economically equal society, and this is how you do that.
Right. Yeah, it is very frustrating, but it can definitely be I think that having these conversations with workers that maybe do care about things like this and letting them know that actually, no, the union is going to be, you are going to be the person with your coworkers that is actually going to be able to make real strides on these issues. I think workers will understand that if you're able to talk to them about that, because that's the reality. The land acknowledgement and the pronouns was clipped with the part about unions used to be good, but now they're not. And that, in the face of all of these things that we're seeing, we just watched a video about how people today are working 72 days in a row. I mean, unions are needed now, and unions are needed at places like REI, because you don't just have to have literally the worst job in the world or the most difficult or the most dangerous job in the world to be unionized, to need to be unionized, because being union, all that is collectively coming together and pooling your labor power together and using that leverage collectively and meaningfully. And every worker doing anything, anybody who labors should be in a union. Anybody who labors should be unionized. Because if you're not, no matter what you're doing, you're being taken advantage of. If you are not using the full leverage of the labor, of the value that you create and your coworkers create for your company, you're being screwed over. And I mean, of course, we can talk about how workers are being screwed over because of the surplus value that's being taken off of them, even in a union environment. But the surplus value is less, right, in a union environment because they're using that leverage, and every worker deserves that. Whether even if you've got a great job. I'm fortunate enough that I've got a pretty good job. I feel good about my job. I'm in the middle of a 4-year progression. By the time I finish my 4-year progression, I'll be making $80,000 a year. I've got great relationships with my boss. I've got great relationships with my coworkers. I get great reviews on my performance, and I don't hate the job that I do. I mean, I've got good benefits. I've got good health care. I've got good retirement. It's great. But I'm still really glad that I've got a union, because if my boss died tomorrow, I don't know who's going to be in there, but I've still got the damn contract. And the new boss can't change it. The new boss can't just up and change it arbitrarily. So I've got a good boss now. I've got a good job now. That could change tomorrow if I didn't have a union. And so that's,
That last one is great, right? I mean, that's what that's what I like to think of as the Exodus 1:8 argument for unionization. And now there rose up a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph, right? That's.
Well, yeah, I think that there's almost an aphorism going around in the left now, and it should extend beyond the left, which is that if someone says, I'm pro-union, but anything after the but is going to be bullshit, which is why when Andy and I were trying to create this into a worker co-op, and then Ben said, I've written all these pro-union articles for Jacobin, but I don't think a union is right for GTAA.
Jake, we're like a family.
Yeah, exactly. I said Andy and I we DM'd and we talked about it, but then with the Rogan appearance, I don't know, but no, exactly. Usually good stuff doesn't come after after that. That
yeah,
statement.
Right. That's like the tweet that we did at the beginning of the show. The don't get me wrong, nuclear war is bad. It's very bad, but right,
Yeah. Some statements are you just leave it there, buddy. Like nuclear war is bad. I'm pro-union. Like, let's fucking go. I'm a good person.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like that. I think you can. Sometimes they're complex thoughts. You need to get out there, and people will be mad that you said both of them at the same time. But I mean, there are a couple of exceptions, and that's. Yeah, there you go. Joey's come up with a good counterexample, but overall, somebody says I'm against nuclear war or I like unions, but have your guard up for what comes next. Oh, do you guys hear Union Jake just now? It looked like he was saying something, but I didn't hear him.
Oh no, I just said yeah. I think that I've got the sensitivity on my mic a little bit too high, but yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, all right, very, very good. So we do have there's one other we didn't get to, but I feel okay about because it's stuff that we covered in the other videos. But we do have one last one that I need to play, if only because I need to have it explained to me. This is the one from Amazon.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I, as the editor, am the one that doubled it because you're not going to get it if you see it one time. So it's going to play twice for y'all.
This is intentional, right? It's only 6 seconds, so we're getting the 12-second version.
Yeah, just like a TikTok, you need to see it a few times.
BHM1, be the GOAT vote. Hey, it's time to vote. BHM1, be the GOAT vote. Hey, it's time to vote.
You got to tell us understand about that.
What the hell did you send us?
Help me out here because I'm very lost.
So GOAT means greatest of all time in Zoomer.
Right.
So
I follow that part.
Yeah, far so good.
Goated with the sauce, yeah.
So by voting against the union, you are being the greatest BHM1 employee of all time.
Okay. All right.
Basically, if you vote against the union, you're going to be a quirked up white boy with a little bit of swagger goated with the sauce. Sorry, some Gen Z stuff going on over here, but yeah, it's that's as cringe as I just was. I think is kind of.
Well, it's not even that you're being cringe. It's you gotta help me out here a little bit.
No, just Ben, be the goat and vote. That's all you have to do to be the goat is vote. See, it rhymes, and that means I'm cool.
It's some like Simpsons level pandering going on, right? And or like hello
I
fellow kids.
I was actually literally just thinking about the Simpsons. I don't remember what episode this was, but there's a scene where Marge and Homer are walking around like a state fair or carnival or something, and Homer says, "See, Marge, I told you that they could deep fry my shirt." And she says, "I didn't say they couldn't, right? I said you shouldn't." Or actually, no, that's not even I don't know how the wires got crossed in my head to that one, but fuck, no, it wasn't the same episode. I don't even remember where this comes from. This is just this is a similarly 6-second snippet that haunts me, and I do remember that I do not remember what the line was leading up to it, but I just remember Homer saying, "See, Marge, that rhymes, and you know it rhymes." Which
I actually thought you were going to go with, "They lied to us through song." I hate it when that happened.
Thank you for the super chat.
Yes. Thank you, Strong.
Yeah, so that was like part of their final push to get people not to vote no. Was their idea?
Yeah, that's the video telling people. The rest of that video is just instructions on filling out your ballot. So there wasn't any other like more sophisticated anything. That was just a video like showing people how to fill out their ballot. And they needed to put that in there. So.
Yeah, and I think to put a finer point on it, like I feel like you might see these videos and you're like, this shit really convinces people, but maybe you'd agree, fellow Union Jake, but I don't think people are really being convinced. I think that we talked a little bit about anti-campaigns on the show before. They're getting at people on a primal level where it's like the fear of the unknown could make you lose what you have, right? And also that's like the stick of it, right? And the honey, as we say, or that's the vinegar, and the honey is like, give us a second chance. We're being super nice now, right? So it's kind of like people are like, well, I don't trust all of that bullshit, and I'm already doing so bad, I can't afford to lose anything. So I'm gonna go with my manager who's begging me for a second chance. And I don't think people are. There's obviously some ideological people who go all anti-union, but I think it's just about fear. And it's an emotional campaign more than an intellectual campaign on their part at the end of the day. But
I did have one fellow when I was down there say that he was very hostile. He was very hostile, and he was like, what are you, is the union giving out money or whatever? And obviously, this was a hostile person. And I said, well, we're not giving out money, but we can help you get more money. And I told him about how UPS drivers doing the same thing that Amazon drivers do for $16 an hour. UPS drivers make $30-$40 an hour, right? And his response was, more money means more taxes. So, this was not a person that was, interested in being talked to, obviously. but I think that the captive audience meetings are much more effective than these videos. But when I talk about these videos on my show, when I have in the past, I like to because they say a lot of the same things. So I hope that what we've done tonight and what I've done and will continue to do is to talk about the same things that they're going to hear in these captive audience meetings that have a lot more pressure because it's coming from their boss or from somebody that their bosses have paid in person. And so that's a lot more effective than seeing like a YouTube video. But I hope that, I can put a little bit of something in there for when they go through a campaign like that they know, inoculation isn't isn't like a super important part of organizer trainings for nothing. You know, if you can put the seed in there before the boss can get there, that's really, really helpful. So.
And they always say the same bullshit because they buy the same exact script. That's the only thing we have going for us.
Those Hershey's videos, they didn't even custom make videos for Hershey's. All of the ends of the videos or beginnings of the videos was like copyright 2017 Labor Relations Institute. It was all literally just generic anti-union propaganda.
When I get done with my shift at Hershey's, like fill in the.
Well, if you're listening, you notice that they never actually mention the company or the union in these videos because they want it to be something that they can plug into any website.
I'm also going to point out, I don't know if this means anything or not, but the animation style in that Hershey's Unions Are a Business video seemed very reminiscent of PragerU. So I don't know if there's some talent in common there.
I want to see.
Somebody mentioned that in the chat.
Yeah, what are the name of the kids show characters in PragerU? I can't remember them. Oh, we need Lilo and Layla learn about unions. I think I'm guessing you haven't seen Lilo and Layla Union, Jake. In which case,
I have not.
I think you're in a better position than us. But yeah, no, it's all the same bullshit. So all you could, but like he was saying, it's your boss could literally trap you in a room. I mean, I think technically they might be optional, but it's a mandatory meeting. Trap you in a room.
I don't think they are technically optional. I think they're literally mandatory. Yeah. And that's one of the things RWDSU is challenging, actually, because the NLRA has a right to refrain from union activities, and that's never been interpreted as getting you out of captive audience meetings. But RWDSU just filed a ULP to challenge captive audience meetings wholesale. So we'll see how that goes.
And I think the PRO Act would have done a lot to curtail those, but we can. Yeah, but we're gonna have to do it on our own. We're gonna have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Well, I mean, I think that in this case that is actually kind of true, right? I mean, I think that it's unfortunately very unlikely that you're going to get better labor laws before you have a massive, expansion of organizing. It seems like much more likely at this point that it's going to have to go in the opposite order.
That's how it happened the first time. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. One more time. Maybe my mind is prepared for it now. Let's do be the goat vote and see if it's going to make any more sense.
BHM1, be the goat vote. Hey, it's time to vote. BHM1, be the goat vote. Hey, it's time to vote.
Now I see Ben's point about me not having voting rights. If you just watch that enough times.
I don't know if
the problem with that is her emphasis. I think that's the problem. Is her
be
emphasis.
The goat.
Yeah, she should have said, like she says, "Be the goat, vote," and she should have said, "Be the goat, vote."
Well, I think it's literally fucking Alexa reading it out loud.
Yeah, it's like Alexa, but she's being like peppy, and it's some, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's cool. I mean, I'm
Alexa on ecstasy.
I'm an old man, I remember when Kurt Cobain died. This is my sense of what's cool is like very severely out of whack. But there is something that feels especially dystopian about that video, right? Like that feels like something that like in the like movie that's set in the 23rd century, and people are like the toxic cloud is about to come in and the corporation wants you to go to work anyway, like that would be the exact like tone and feel of the video that they would send.
Yeah, it feels like it would fit in Sorry to Bother You, which is a really good movie, crazy but really good movie about union organizing if you haven't seen it. But in their dystopia, I feel like it would fit in.
Nice. Okay, well, you do, Jake. I really appreciate this. This is fantastic. got to come back.
Yeah, happy to come on anytime. I appreciate it. I do a union talk radio show in North Alabama. We're on a conservative talk station, actually, in Huntsville, and then we're on a black news and soul station in Muscle Shoals, and a community station in New Orleans. And we talk about unions. And your audience, your Debate Bro audience, I think would like some of our more recent shows. There's this anti-protest bill that's going through the Alabama legislature, and we talked to the author of the bill for an hour.
Oh, wow.
So that was a lot of fun. We also talked to one of the local conservative talk radio hosts about unions. We asked him why he thought Minnie Mouse wearing a pants for 1 month at one Disney World location halfway across the world was serious, but he hadn't devoted literally any time to the mine workers strike in our state. We talked about why there was some really, really funny things that he said, but you can go and watch that. It's our conversation with Michael Yaffe. We've had 2 with him over the past couple of months, so that's been a lot of fun. The show's called The Valley Labor Report. You can find it anywhere: YouTube, podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Definitely check it out. And I think we got to have you back to do, you were talking about doing those like Mad Boss, Sad Boss role plays. I think we got to do a post game with that sometime with some of those role plays. I think that'll be a lot of fun, especially if I get as drunk as I tend to do on some of the post games. So yeah, we definitely got to have you back. That was awesome.
I'll get my dice ready.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Roll deception.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's I don't know what the preferred term is, but I'm pretty sure they don't like being called debate bros. But in any case, but, yeah.
Are you sure? I thought that's what your community likes to be called.
Yeah,
I thought it was give heads.
Isn't that what you people call yourself?
There's a woker way. There's a woker way.
All right. Well, we are going to go to a post game, probably a pretty short post game tonight, considering the time. But we are going to go to that now. Jason Miles might be joining us for some of that. We're going to see a woman in Los Angeles who has an unusual plan to stop the invasion of Ukraine. So should be good stuff all around. So if you are a GTAA patron, you should already have the link, where I was very optimistic about the time it would start, but I'm glad we did all this. And if you are not, what's wrong with you? Do that. So patreon.com/Ben Burgess. That link is in the description of the episode. So is the link for where you can find Valley Labor Report and where you can follow them on social media. So do all of those things, and I will see some of you in the post game. Left is best.